Paradise, Queensland, Australia, playground of the world. What IndyCar driver will find paradise today? Will it be Michael Andretti? He won in the dark here last year. Perhaps the charging Jacques Villeneuve, the winner at Miami. Is it time for new faces like Mauricio Gugelmin or Scott Pruitt? Or will some old veterans like Bobby Rahal or Danny Sullivan return to the top? What about Junior, the reigning champion? He struggled 2 weeks ago. The gang's in Australia, where it's anybody's game, and there are no guarantees as we go racing down under. We're in Queensland, Australia, right at the edge of the Pacific at beautiful Surfers Paradise for round 2 of the PPG IndyCar World Series, the Australian IndyCar Grand Prix. Hi, everybody. And, 2 weeks ago, we raced in Miami, and what did we learn from that first race that might help us predict the Indianapolis 500 or even the championship? Well, very little. What we did find out was there's a great diversity among these teams now. Almost all of the teams in the field are competitive. And because of that, we're seeing some great racing and some incredibly good stories developing in the IndyCars. Let's run down a few of them now, beginning with Jack Arute.
Paul, 1 year ago, Michael Andretti came back to IndyCar racing after a brief foray in Formula One competition and scored a victory right here at Surfers Paradise as the sun began to set on the race course. Now he's back again. He put his car on the pole for this year's event, but this time it's with a brand new team. He's reunited once again with Newman Haas, and based upon their performance in Miami, where he ran so strong until a mechanical malfunction knocked him out of the event, one has to think he's got to be a heavy favorite for today's event as well. But flanking him on the outside of the front row, the man who was victorious at Miami and who the Australian press have tagged with the nickname the baby-faced assassin. Young Jacques Villeneuve is here with Team Green and giving them strong promise in the early events of '95 as well. Other great stories on pit road too. Let's check in with Gary Gerould.
And Jack, for the second event this year, the fastest qualifying rookie, newcomer Gilles de Ferran. De Ferran, driving for Jim Hall's racing team, consistently quick at Miami. He was the provisional pole sitter, then got bumped back to the second row. Had it not been for the blown engine in the latter part of qualifying yesterday, he might have been in the front row again, but he got bumped from alongside Andretti back to the third row. One thing is sure, this native, 27 years of age of Brazil, who's made his home recently in England, now headquartered in Indianapolis, has rejuvenated the Pennzoil team for Jim Hall. Keep an eye on him today. Now let's check in with Sam Posey.
Well, Gary, I've been wondering about a couple of things. First, brakes. Will they last? This track here has very fast straightaways and very tight chicanes, and you have to really punish the brakes if you want to go fast. Result, they might overheat and fade toward the end of the race. Secondly, Paul Tracy, the brilliant young Canadian. 2 weeks ago at Miami, he had 4 crashes in practice and another one in the race, putting himself in the doghouse with his new team, Newman Haas. Will he be able to stay on the road today? We have a camera in his car, so we'll be the first to know if he goes off. Now, Bobby, you've been following the Penske team.
Well, Sam, as we both know, they had a terrible race in Miami a couple of weekends ago. Now, when everybody else was putting their cars onto the airplanes to come right here to Australia, Penske was sending 2 cars to Phoenix to test. That's a 94 and a 95. Now, after that, he picked out the best car. They sent that one to Los Angeles, where Air Cargo was waiting to bring it to Australia. Now, the big question would be, is it going to be worth it? All of that effort and that fantastic amount of money. We'll see today.
Well, the engines have been started. The field of 26 now beginning the pace lap. So let's take a look at the starting grid. On the pole is Michael Andretti. He is the defending Gold Coast champion. Every lap he led last year. Alongside is Jacques Villeneuve. He's won 2 of the last 4 races. And all of that special testing sure paid off for Roger Penske's team, because inside of row 2 is Al Unser Jr. But he only has 1 top 10 finish here at Surfers, alongside his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi, who on the other hand has won here and twice finished second. In row 3 is Teo Fabi, driving for Jerry Forsythe. And Gilles de Ferran. Were it not for a failed power plant early in qualifying, he might have qualified to the front row. In the 4th row is Stefan Johansson, driving that very successful 1994 Penske chassis. And Jimmy Vasser, who had his best finish of 1994 here last year, a 4th. In the 5th row, Paul Tracy. He's never finished here at Australia. And Mauricio Gugelmin, who finished 2nd at Miami 2 weeks ago. In row number 6, it's Scott Pruitt and Adrian Fernandez. The 7th row, Bobby Rahal and Christian Fittipaldi. In the 8th row, Robbie Gordon and Eric Bachelard. In row 9 is Eddie Cheever and Brian Herta, but driving his 1994 car. In the 10th row is Danny Sullivan and Alessandro Zampedri. In row 11, Raul Boesel and Andre Ribeiro. In the 12th row, Eliseo Salazar and Buddy Lazier. And in the final row, Dean Hall and Hiro Matsushita. Now, Bobby Unser, let's take a look at this track.
Well, Paul, first of all, I think it's one of the nicest tracks we have on our entire circuit. It's 2.8 miles around, generally a very smooth track, 2 very long straightaways on the front and the back. But these particular straightaways have chicanes in them. The front chicane is got one, or the front straightaway 1 chicane, the back straightaway 2 chicanes with a lot of 90-degree corners at both ends. This, of course, is what causes a lot of the brake problems.
All right. 65 laps here, 181.67 miles the distance. The race record set by Nigel Mansell in 1993. The fuel window should hit at about 17 laps. It could be as late as 23. Very soon they'll come into alignment, though. One car already indicating a problem. They have the yellow flag out behind the 19 car of Eric Bachelard. And no indication what it looks like there is still some vapor at the back of the engine, like it may be running. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
They had difficulties in the warm-up session this morning. They totally thrashed a gearbox. They had to substitute parts. They had no confidence. They figured they'd be in early retirement. They did not think they would have to retire this early. Great frustration. Bachelard had qualified 16th. They were excited, but obviously in serious difficulty. It may jeopardize the start of this race.
Yeah, it certainly will, and this is obviously a gearbox problem, Bobby.
Yes, absolutely, but you can see their engine running. You see all the fumes coming out of the back of the heat waves from all the heat of the engine. The biggest problem he's got right now is when the engines run, they don't get any air to the radiators. He's going to have a severe heating problem pretty quick. You need to keep the cars moving just to get air through them.
Well, I suspect there's a gearbox problem there that's far more severe than anything that he'll do to the engine in the next few minutes. So what this will mean is a yellow flag start for the field while they try to get Eric Bachelard off the race course.
In some ways, this could be good. It'll deprive us of the excitement of the start, but in the 4 other years they've held this event, they've had a crash, a multiple pileup in the first chicane. Now, that chicane was eased a little bit for this year, hoping to avoid that, but to go through there under yellow might be good.
This is actually the moment of the start of the race.
Bizarre.
But it will start under yellow, and the lap will count.
And the white flag with a red cross means there's official vehicles, safety vehicles on the racetrack. The yellow flag, of course, means don't go fast.
Jim Swintel, the official starter of IndyCar, monitoring the field here. Man who is very conscious about these starts and the safety of the start. So he says this track is particularly well suited because of the long roll-up before the starters stand. So the field under yellow will maneuver around the track, and then I suspect will fall into rows of 2 as they come to the green flag.
This race seems to be somewhat star-crossed. Of course, last year with showers sweeping intermittently across the track, they had to start it and stop it and start it and stop it several different times. Finally, it became, here's Bachelard now waiting for the toe-in. It became the only race in IndyCar history ever to be ended because of darkness.
Plenty of onboard cameras for you. As we look at Eric Bachelard, this is looking backward from underneath the rollover bar of Michael Andretti's car. So that's the pole position car. And this is Paul Tracy's car. Of course, back in the field, he'll be starting in 9th position.
Tracy was the fastest in practice on Saturday, but he had a lot of bad luck when it came time for qualifying. We'll see if he moves up fast.
The nose of Bobby Rahal's car, starting in 13th. And Brian Herta's car, the 18th position. So those are some of our onboard camera views for you here today. As Michael Andretti leads them around, we'll also have onboard cameras with Robbie Gordon, the PPG Mercedes-Benz pace car, trying to get the field under control now.
I think what's going to happen here, Paul, both Michael Andretti and Jacques Villeneuve, they never really raced each other, certainly not off the front of a grid before. Here's Robbie Gordon we're riding with now. He's had his troubles in practice too, but he's very fast on this track potentially. But I think the first laps will be a question of intimidation. Who can seize that lead first and what happens immediately afterwards. And I think Michael Andretti is pumped unbelievably for this race.
But, you know, on the other hand, and you and I were talking about it before the start of the race, the fact is that I think that Jacques Villeneuve is an incredibly bright driver, and I would suggest knows better than to get in a confrontation early on with Michael Andretti and should just let him go. But, of course, that's why we run the race.
Well, look what happened in Miami. Jacques was able to take the lead in the pits. His pit work was so good. He took the lead there. So obviously that's a scenario that would be possible for him here. But I think Jacques Villeneuve knows that he's probably on his way sooner or later to Formula One. And I think he savors every race that he does here in IndyCars.
You know, just while we're talking and the race hasn't started yet, let's just mention also pit speeds in and out, 80 miles an hour. So the drivers can't gain an awful lot coming in or exiting the pit crews. Therefore become the big deciding factors during the pit stops.
Beautiful high-rise apartment buildings and hotels line this circuit. Fans gathered up on the balconies of these as we look for the green flag. And here we go. Really the start of lap number 2, but the first lap of racing. And look at Villeneuve. He outfoxes Michael on acceleration, but Michael's got the line going into the corner.
Michael was just going to get in there deeper. That's all it amounts to. He just made up his mind.
And it was clean through that first chicane. Here they are already down into the second.
Al Unser Jr. dropped into third place. That's DeFerrin moving up quickly behind Al Unser Jr. Rest of the field through safely at this point.
Villeneuve driving a very cautious race.
Al Unser Jr. came off the corner alongside of Villeneuve and almost got crowded to the wall. That put little Al back, and DeFerrin moved up. That's Teo Fabi that's right behind DeFerrin in the 33 car.
Bobby has started this race on a harder compound of Goodyear tire than anyone else.
And look at DeFerrin as he moves inside of Villeneuve.
Oh!
And shortcuts the course. Now, there's an interesting rule on this. That will probably be okay, won't it, Bobby?
Well, that is really going to be debatable. You're not supposed to be able to make a gain. Now, he physically made a gain. He passed going in, didn't make it through, had to use that to go across. If I were Wally Dallenbach, I would call that as a gain, which he said this morning in our meeting. You can't make a gain through the chicanes by cutting across.
I agree with you, Bobby.
So I would say my official call, which is
your official opinion.
My official opinion says that they have to give him a penalty for that one.
Well, it did give him an opportunity to get in the corner much hotter, and then he cut across there, though in terms of actual ground gained after he made the pass, it wasn't that much, but it certainly aided him in making that pass.
Look what's happened here. Michael has pulled out an immense lead, and as we have another look at DeFerrin.
This is DeFerrin now. He comes in very, very hot. Makes the turn into the corner, at this point carrying too much speed and can't get off the corner safely.
And the fact of it is he couldn't have made it if there would have been a wall there, and that's what Wally Dallenbach says. You're not supposed to gain going across. So his turn would have been a bad turn or a wreck or whatever had there been a wall there. So I'm sure Wally's looking at that.
Al Unser Jr. moving on Jacques Villeneuve now. This is a battle for third place. Little Al getting alongside and getting past.
Villeneuve uncharacteristically cautious, almost timid here in the opening laps.
Now he's having a problem, Sam. He's not up to his normal speed. We all have watched the boy run. He's not quite up to speed.
Teo Fabi as he forces Villeneuve to the high side of the course, and that lets Little Al move inside. Now Little Al is running behind Fabi. The running order is Andretti, DeFerrin, Villeneuve, Fabi, Al Unser Jr., Emerson Fittipaldi.
Now these harder compound tires that Bobby is running, of course, would come into their own about halfway through this first fuel load after 14, 15, 16 laps. So the fact that Bobby is running strong in fourth right now bodes extremely well for him.
Teo Fabi carrying that number 33. Remember 1983, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He brought 33 as a rookie driver to the pole. A lucky number for he and car owner Jerry Forsythe. They're teamed back together again, and they should be a formidable opponent for the rest of the Indy cars this year. Certainly proving that out now, running in fourth place.
Very often when you see the tires or the cars going in and you see the smoke coming off the front tires, means their brake balance is more on the front, and that's just kind of normal for getting into the turn.
At the start-finish line, they just displayed a black flag to this car, number 8, the Pennzoil car of Gilles DeFerrin, because he apparently improved his position in violation of the steward's edict as he cut through that chicane. So he will be called in, stop-and-go penalty, back on the circuit.
And that's going to be a very costly thing. People have to remember, on a road circuit, That's a very costly thing to have to come in and stop and take back off. He'll probably come out more than halfway back in the field.
Michael Andretti leads it after 3 laps. DeFerrin will answer the back flag and fall out of second place. That'll move Teo Fabi up to second, followed by Al Unser Jr. and Jacques Villeneuve. Gold Coast of Australia in beautiful surfer's paradise, where the twin yellow flags fly at the start-finish line as a result of an incident just a few moments ago involving Adrian Fernandez. There he is. The Ducati car bounces off of the barrier after being pushed a little wide, or the car itself pushing wide going into the corner. You ride now on the front nose of Bobby Rahal's car. Fernandez really lighting up those brakes as he made the turn in, and can't get the car back pointed straight as he comes off of the corner, bounces off of the tire wall. So that necessitated a full course caution. It brought the field under the control of the PPG pace car with Johnny Rutherford at the wheel, and now we anticipate going back to green flag racing shortly here. Michael Andretti is the leader of the race. As soon as the green flag comes out, we anticipate that Gilles DeFerrin will acknowledge the black flag displayed just before the yellow, come into the pits for his stop-and-go penalty. The actual order of scoring will then be Michael Andretti, Teo Fabi, Al Unser Jr., and Jacques Villeneuve and Emerson Fittipaldi rounding off the top 5.
One consequence of this time spent under the yellow, of course, is an easing of the potential brake problems. Every lap they spend under the yellow, and the skies also have clouded up. It's a little cooler, make the drivers think they may get through a little bit better with the brakes.
Michael Andretti leads the field around. Gary Gerald?
Well, Jim Hall is not a happy car owner about this black flag penalty. They appealed. They thought that they had won the appeal. Then upon further review, they said, no, we will bring him in for a black flag. And Jim Hall is not a happy man right now. He contends that his driver was trying to avoid an incident when he shortcutted the course. And even though he advanced the position, Hall and his group doesn't think that the penalty is just. They're still lobbying with officials. But to the best of our knowledge, Paul, after we go green, they will, in fact, bring DeFerrin in for the stop and go.
And those conversations with the stewards do make for some interesting conversations. Stefan Johansson, the 16 car, the field will all be tightly bunched, so that too will adversely affect DeFerrin's position when he makes the stop and go, because they were a bit strung out before. He might have been able to get in and out without losing nearly as many positions as he might now.
His background in European racing, though, is in this kind of thing exactly, and he's extremely aggressive in traffic. I think we'll see DeFerrin pick off car after car, particularly under braking.
So now the pace begins to pick up. Michael Andretti will lead the field back. Pace car peels off for the pit area. Already Al Unser Jr. on the move. Green flag is out. DeFerrin will take the full lap, and then he should come in. Michael Andretti leads the field. Unser Jr. moved on Teo Fabi. That put him into second.
Well, it looked like they were rubbing tires coming down for the start, Paul. I think they might have touched wheels a little bit there.
Jimmy Vasser looking good, then Fittipaldi and Paul Tracy closing in at the back of Fittipaldi. Michael Andretti's not pulling away quite like he did last time.
Tracy's having a good first part of this race, running really steadily in heavy traffic.
A look back from Michael's car. DeFerrin trying to keep up. He wants to lose as little distance as possible.
Well, by now he's already heard, I'm sure, by radio via Jim Hall that he's going to have to come in. He's probably sitting there very angry. But he might have halfway expected it when the incident happened at any rate.
Michael Andretti out in front, 7 laps complete here in Surfers Paradise, Australia. Scheduled distance, 65 laps. Michael Andretti bounces it off the curbs on both sides. Most of the drivers have been driving very disconnected like this all weekend.
Michael says it's a track that really rewards aggressive driving. That is, when you do bounce off the curbs and shortcut the track, you gain time. On other tracks, you sometimes just lose time doing that.
Now here is a piece of information from the officials of the race. They're going to show the black flag to car number 1, Al Unser Jr., and that's because of that move that he made as they came toward the green flag. He looked to me like he jumped the start a bit, but you're his uncle.
Well, I think he did too, Paul. I mean, I can't help whether I'm his uncle or not. I feel that he did jump the flag. He looked to me like he bumped tires, bumped wheels with Fabi, and I think this is a proper deal.
So Gilles DeFerrin and Al Unser Jr. both answer the black flag. And Unser Jr. hammers it coming out of the pits and gets around DeFerrin.
Well, I've never seen little Al any more aggressive than he is today. I think he must feel that the car's working a lot better because he's one aggressive driver.
Well, Bobby, you described the work that the Penske team put in the last couple of weeks, an incredible amount of work and expense, but it's paid off. They were on the middle of the front row, and now they look very competitive here.
Well, they're going to look great for a few moments because they blended back in at about 18th position. So there are cars in front of them now that earlier in the weekend during practice and qualifying, they were much quicker than. Well, not much quicker, but somewhat superior to. And so we should see them as they carve their way up through this field. Here's that restart. Now take a look at Al Unser Jr., the fourth pace car, peels off for the pit.
Notice how far over to the left he goes. He actually touches that painted place that is supposed to demark the entrance to the pit.
And that was
might
that
have
white
been part of it, don't you think, Bobby?
Yes, it was that white thing that I thought was maybe a little bit of dust from the tires touching each other. They really didn't touch, but he was definitely passing before the green flag fell. There's no question about that.
Michael Andretti has been a dominant force every year that he has run this race. Of course, he won it last year, leading every single lap and beating his nemesis at the time, Nigel Mansell. He once again just proves that he's in a class by himself as long as his equipment hold up. But Bobby, who you see in second in that white and Dayco orange car with those hard tires, is really very interesting threat, don't you think, Bobby?
Yes, and no doubt about that, Sam.
And like we said, it's starting. There seem to be surprises wherever we go now with the Indy cars. The season only a race and a fraction old, but still the practices and qualifying have been spectacular with some most interesting performances. So the sixth car, Michael Andretti, is out in front. That's Teo Fabi and Jacques Villeneuve in pursuit, and there's Jimmy Vasser as he comes off the corner. And now the officials tell us, and I was kind of wondering about this. Bobby, you mentioned that the speed limit on the pits was 80 miles an hour. Little Al touched 90 coming out.
Yes,
that's going to be another violation.
They made it quite plain also that 85 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour is the speed limit. 85 would be the point of a penalty. And of course, little Al, if he was recorded at 90 on the radar gun, he's got that penalty coming. But I tell you, he's really hot and really aggressive. I haven't seen him this aggressive for a long time.
It seemed that he got a little carried away with the idea of exiting the pits in front of DeFerrin. I don't blame him for wanting to come out ahead.
It's hard to pass here. You know, if you can pass in the pits via a pit stop or via exit of a pit, and that's the place to do it. It's a lot easier than it is out on the racetrack.
Bobby, as you recall, lost his ride with Jim Hall last year at the end of the year. That ride is now being driven by DeFerrin. So Bobby is looking very good here.
The beautiful Surfers Paradise, Australia. Michael Andretti has led right from the start of this race. We've just concluded the 10th lap as the Pacific Ocean rolls in just a few yards from the circuit. The Marriott Surfers Paradise Resort, just a few feet away from the pit straight here at the racetrack. Interesting story, Floyd Ganassi so likes the showers in this resort hotel that he bought one of the shower heads to take back to the United States. Let's go pit side, Jack Arute.
Paul, one of the things that's happened with the Firestone Goodyear combination for tires here at IndyCar is that Goodyear brings two separate types of tires to every race. One is the recommended setup, then about 3 or 4 points harder is the optional setup. Michael Andretti qualified on the recommended setup, but there's the OP. We saw it on Robbie Gordon's tires in Miami. Michael Andretti is set to put the optional tire, the harder tire, on in his first pit stop. That should come around lap 18 or 19, could come as late as lap 23.
So that's a harder compound tire.
Yes, and what the reason for all this is, so, whoa, look at Jeff.
The 64 car.
Bobby Lazier. Buddy Lazier. Left it a little bit late in braking. There you see.
They're running way back in the field, back in 20th place, able to continue on. Jimmy Vasser looking very strong in 4th place.
I started to mention the reason for the two tires, Paul, is the soft tires get put on for qualifying because they heat up quicker, and for short spurts are better. Often the harder tires work better when you've got slipperiness, a lot of rubber on the road like you see right there in our picture.
Jimmy Vasser, who you see here in the STP car, is running 4th. A very strong performance for him.
Back at the front of the field, Michael Andretti, Teo Fabi in pursuit. as well as Villeneuve. There's Vassar. Paul Tracy runs in 5th place.
The gap from first to second is down from 2.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. So Fabi is doing very well on this hard compound tire, the one which Jack tells us Michael will be shifting to.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jimmy Vassar, look at him there. He's looking so good driving for Chip Ganassi this year.
He looks like he's sitting in a midget race car coming off the corner sideways.
Well, he knows how to do that too, doesn't he?
He made that deal to join Ganassi well after Brian Herta was already aboard the team. It looked like a one-car team. Now it's a two-car team, and there's every reason to be very happy if you're Chip Ganassi with this young find.
You know, Jimmy Vassar right there, the number 12, came up with Jim Hayhoe, a guy that's been in motor racing or IndyCar racing for an awful long time. Couldn't keep the gap up, we mentioned last couple of weeks ago. And now, of course, Chip Ganassi has him, and it's a really good team, and it's a good car. And that's the Floyd Ganassi, the father that bought the shower head.
And he will find probably that because it's a metric sour head, he won't be able to screw it in when he gets home.
Don't weld it together, Sam.
So there's 2nd place in pursuit of Michael Andretti, now 1.5 seconds back. Look at Fabi light those brakes as he comes into the corner, and oh my, wow, he drives that course every inch of it.
Remember, Fabi is an engineer, a very skilled, technical man. Fabi, we were talking about that the other day, and I think he has an understanding of how to run this race with this harder compound that may standing in very good stead.
All right, let's go to the Penske pits. Gary Gerald.
Roger, in view of the 2 stop-and-go penalties, what do you tell your driver?
Well, we just have to take it easy. I can't believe the first one. I didn't see it on the monitor. You fellows know more whether it was a violation or not. Then the second one, they're talking about speed in the pits. We had 2 cars going out together. I didn't know a radar gun just works on 1 car, but with nothing we can do about it, we got to keep racing here. It's a long way to go.
Has this totally destroyed your chances to win this race, or do you still think you can make a good day out of it?
Well, it's a long day. I mean, we just got to, we're not a lap down. We're on the same lap, so we just have to work as hard as we can and get some points. So I think we've got to be positive and keep going.
Positive is the key word for a team that is struggling out of the box this year, but all that testing at Firebird, they came in with high hopes, Paul. Now they're having to come out from the back again.
Well, it's a long way, too. Al Unser Jr. is in 20th place. His teammate Fittipaldi is in 6th, though.
You know, the radar problem coming in or coming out of the pits, it's a radar gun that shoots out in a cone angle. I think Roger Penske has made a good point there, and hopefully CART will figure out a way to straighten this out or cure it, because there's no way to know which car. It's no different than getting a speed limit or speeding ticket on the highway. Who was really going fast out of those 2? And can it really do both of them? We know that it can't.
I think I heard you try to explain that to the Georgia Patrol once, and I don't think you explained it to them either.
I certainly have.
Let's go to the pits and Jack.
Well, Bobby, I'm a real expert on radar. I've been caught by it so many times out on a highway. What IndyCar has done this year is, rather than utilizing a stationary radar gun, they have policemen on pit road, literally PPG IndyCar officials that point the gun at individual cars. That has cut down on the situation that you're speaking about, and as you watch this guy work, he'll look at 1 car, point the gun, get the reading, then point it to another car. So it's a little bit different than what you're saying upstairs, and I ought to know, man. I've been caught by radar a lot of times.
And Bobby's shaking his head, Jack, and I think I've heard this explanation before, but let's try it again.
Yeah, Jack, if you even call a radar company, the people that make these guns, they'll tell you it goes out in a cone. They have no conscience. They really have no idea, those guns, which car it's picking up. Often, they'll even pick up color as opposed to who's moving the fastest.
Well, there it is as they both came out of the pit area. And little Al was carrying more speed, but of course he was also coming from further back in the pits and had the opportunity to roll up faster. But all you have to do is take the gun's word for it, and you say that's no good.
It isn't in a case like that, that's for sure.
All right. Surfers Paradise, Michael Andretti out in front now by 3.5 seconds over Teo Fabi. In 3rd place, Jacques Villeneuve, then Jimmy Vassar and Paul Tracy. So the action continues at Surfers Paradise, Australia. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. As we look over from the harbor right next to the hotels here to the track itself, using the public thoroughfares down the right there, that is the Esplanade that runs alongside the Pacific. Let's go to the pits and Jack Arute.
Well, a spirited run for young Jimmy Vassar, but it's all gone for naught. Over my shoulder, they are working on the gearbox. First he lost 6th gear, now he has lost 5th gear. It was about the time for him to pit anyways, but now they're going to have to take a look at a very disjointed rear gearbox. Let's check in with Gary Gerould. Gary?
Jack, early problems for Christian Fittipaldi. Spent a considerable amount of time in the pits with the car locked in 2nd gear. They broke the shifting mechanism. They have now replaced it. He's back on the circuit, but he lost a lot of time.
Looking to and anticipating the stop by Teo Fabi, the current 2nd place car in the line. 20 laps are complete. There's the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. He has led every lap thus far.
The Ganassi team has had nothing but gearbox trouble all weekend. Brian Herta in their other car had to start in their 1994 car because of gearbox problems in the 95.
We mentioned at starting that the fuel window for a pit stop would be between laps 17 and 23. We've just completed the 21st lap, and here comes Teo Fabi into the pits. Gary?
Well, we take a look at this brand new team for Jerry Forsyth springing into action. They've been very impressive. As Stan pointed out, they were the only team that started on the optional tire in qualifying. Teo is excited about this team as anything we've heard him talk about in recent years. Blipping the throttle at 15 seconds. Now off to Jack Crowley. In about 16.5 seconds, he's back on course, Paul.
So the first of the stops of the leaders, and that was 2nd place in and out of the pits. Watching very carefully that 80-mile-an-hour pit speed limit as most of the rest of the teams now begin to lay out equipment for the stops anticipated by their cars.
I hope people can realize how hard that 80 miles an hour limit is on these guys. Sometimes that's 1st and 2nd gear only, and here they are going fast all of the time in the race, and all of a sudden when they come out of the pits or go in, they really have to do 80 miles an hour. It's really difficult.
Remember, it was at this point 2 weeks ago in Miami that there was such a reshuffling of the lead when Jacques Villeneuve managed to sneak into the lead in the pits.
Yellow flag being waved there is for Buddy Lazier, who spun off just a few laps ago. His car is at the edge of the course. It was in a much more precarious position, but they have not gotten it back into the action, and so it sits just at the edge of the course. From the front nose of Bobby Rahal's car. Rahal currently runs in 8th place. Just ahead of him is Mauricio Guzman.
Rahal was looking terrific yesterday, Saturday, during the warm-ups, the practice session. But when it came time for qualifying, he had trouble with the electronics. The engine would not run right. He dropped way, way down. I think he might have been 3rd or 4th on the grid. He dropped way down and has now had to work his way all the way back up. I talked to Carl Hogan, his team owner, about what happened yesterday. Carl said, I was so angry, I just had to leave the track early. I couldn't stick around. I knew I'd blow up at somebody.
No, Carl just wanted to go to the beach. That's what it was. Little walk down the beach.
Look at this. 170, 180 miles an hour down the straightaway. That's what it looks like to the driver. What a beautiful shot.
Rahal was very happy with the outcome of Miami because as a championship contender, he finished 3rd. He looked down the list and he really thought that he had beaten the other people like Al Unser Jr. and Michael Andretti who could give him a run for the championship.
You can follow around the track here, Sam and Paul. 2 straightaways, pretty fast straightaways, into chicanes, down to the end, into other chicanes. That's a 90-degree corner to the left there.
Making the turn back up to the north now along the beach. The grandstands all around this track. Jam. The crowd here has been spectacular this weekend. The weather beautiful. Temperatures in the high 70s, low 80s all week long. We had one fairly heavy rain shower come through the other night, but nothing that's adversely affected the racing or the practice here.
That's Mauricio Guzman, one of the 6 Brazilians in the race, right ahead of Rahal now as this battle develops. There's a joke going around the pits. The Brazilians are called the Brazilianaires because so many of them seem at least to have an awful lot of sponsorship money to spend in this series.
And a tremendous audience in Brazil, where most of the country will tune into the IndyCar races.
Over 10 million, I heard, tuned into the Miami race. In Brazil alone, that is.
So most of the cars making their stops, though Michael Andretti has not yet elected to come in. He's running on his 23rd lap. Jacques Villeneuve stays out as well and runs in 2nd place. Paul Tracy has come up into 3rd, and this is Emerson Fittipaldi, who was 4th, coming in to make his stop.
Now remember, these cars have computers, and most of them have telemetry, which means that they transmit the information on how much fuel is remaining to the pit, so the teams know when to call them in, even though sometimes we see them go too long.
Scott Pruitt in.
Pruitt had the fastest lap in Miami. Lap 15 on those Firestones. Interesting.
Now DeFerrin in, Brian Herta in.
Looks like a traffic jam. They need a traffic policeman down there.
Matsushita heads out. This is still the 23rd lap of the leader. Routine service here from Chip Ganassi's team. The IndyCar officials look on. Danny Sullivan has made it in and out of the pits for his first stop of the day.
Sullivan has not been a happy camper so far this weekend. Troubles with the setup of the car. Michael on the outside there in heavy traffic.
That was Ribeiro that he had to move around on one side and Salazar on the other. Salazar just coming off of Hitt's pit stop.
And it was Salazar that Michael hit, or that hit Michael, however you want to put it, in Miami 2 weeks ago. So you can see he gave him a very wide berth there.
It's very difficult, Sam, to get two cars. Everybody comes Michael in the pits now.
So Michael Andretti on the 24th lap heads in for his first stop of the day. He's led every lap to this point, Jack.
And Paul, this is all according to plan. They said they wanted to come in around lap 23. That's precisely what they're doing. Now, as they make their change of tires, they go to the harder compound tire, the same tire that Teo Fabi was involved with as he put on. Now, Michael is off and away, and right behind him comes young Paul Tracy. He will take on the harder tires as well. Here's Gary Gerould.
15 seconds on the stop for Team Green. Villeneuve back out. He did not pass Michael Andretti. They won it in the pits at Miami. This time they were quick, not quick enough to gain the lead.
So that lesson learned by the Newman Haas team, and Michael Andretti comes out ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. Paul Tracy roaring back into the action too. Stefan Johansson has moved up into 4th place with these stops. The early stop by Teo Fabi did not pay off. He's still in 5th place.
Tracy is driving a model race. He was careful in the early going. Now he's turned it on and is up to 3rd. Paul Tracy, I think we're going to hear a lot from this afternoon.
Special view as you take a look at Jacques Villeneuve's car. This is a replay of the refuelers cam as they pour that methanol fuel into the 40-gallon fuel tank on the number 27 car of Jacques Villeneuve, and he goes back into action. So that's what it looked like just a few seconds ago, but it wasn't quick enough to beat this man. Michael Andretti is still out in front, not far from the beach on the Gold Coast of Queensland, Australia. Back at Surfers Paradise, Australia, the green flag flies once again after a quick caution period to get Dean Hall's disabled car off the edge of the course. Teo Fabi streams around Jacques Villeneuve and continues his pursuit now of the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. At the same time, Paul Tracy is closing in on Jacques Villeneuve. There is that battle as Tracy is worrying at the back end of Villeneuve's car, and the rest of the field all bunched up together right now.
You know, when you watch the cars go into the chicanes like that, you see them 2 and 3 abreast sometimes. That's the time that a driver really wants to pass because everybody slows down. The problem is when you get there, it's way too narrow.
Michael Andretti, the leader of the race, for an update. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, the word is not good. During that pit stop for Michael Andretti, the fuel hose was not connected long enough to fill the tank. They have looked at the telemetry and they have ascertained that they are 12 gallons short of a full fuel load. That will change all of their pit stop strategy. They will have to change the time that they come in, the windows, and they'll be out of sequence with the rest of the leaders.
Not good news for Michael Andretti. Not good news for the Penske team as well. They've just displayed the black flag to the 5th place car of Emerson Fittipaldi for a pit speed violation. And that on the last round of stops, a black flag going to Gilles de Ferran for tapping one of the hoses in his pits on his way out of the pits. We ride with Robbie Gordon now.
Robbie Gordon is a master at braking very late for these tight turns, so watch this, particularly at the end of one of the big straights when he comes into a chicane. Very, very aggressive driver here.
Robbie Gordon in 9th place right now.
Yes, and he's been having plenty of problems here, Sam. He's not been very fast. He's in 9th place, but you remember, you got a lot of guys who had black flags. Robbie's not had a good weekend. He's been very slow, had a lot of handling problems, not been happy with the car all weekend. Normally, this track, he's awesome fast, but they've not found the answer this trip.
Gordon's car, Menard, the Walker team moved over from the Lola to Menards over the winter, powered by a Ford Cosworth.
You see him jumping these curbs a little bit. There's no fast way through the chicanes unless you shortcut them a bit.
Robbie Gordon yesterday, if all 3 of us can recall, he really was jumping over the curb sometimes. All 4 wheels in the air.
Let's just ride with him a bit now. The gear changes are spectacular here.
having just caught up a little bit in that chicane is the car of Mauricio Gugelmin. Gugelmin is having an excellent run, but it is not as fast as he might have hoped for, because during the first day of practice and qualifying here,
one car off, that's Zampedri. Quick spin, he should be able to get it back started and back on the course, but no, the officials aren't going to take a chance. Full course yellow once again, the fourth of the day.
the man we're looking at here, Paul Tracy.
Now they say they're withdrawing the yellow, but they've got a pace car on the course, so they can't very well do that. Johnny Rutherford driving the pace car.
I was going to say Tracy, who's at the top of your screen there, is suddenly extremely well placed. Michael Andretti having some trouble. Paul Tracy has worked his way up from 9th to 4th. The field is bunched. He's very, very fast now. I think we're going to see some major league driving from it.
All right, let me try. That's Fittipaldi answering the black flag. Let me try and make sense of this for you very quickly. They showed the full course yellow, but only for a few seconds, just enough for Johnny Rutherford to take out the PPG pace car. Then they decided it wasn't necessary, and so he was able to duck back in, and they were able to continue racing on the course. Now, let's go to the pits and have this report from Gary Gerould.
And with Christian Fittipaldi, Paul. Christian, gearbox problems have been a common theme. Did you have any inkling, or was this just one of those sudden things that happened and you had no control over?
No, it was one of those sudden things that just happened. And that was it. End of weekend.
It's awfully tough to have shown so much speed in both Miami and here, and then to be on the sidelines early. How difficult is this transition now, getting to these cars? How frustrating for you?
No, it's okay. I just think that we had everything up there for these both races, and I think that we were extremely unlucky. In Miami, like, we had a very good chance of winning, and then we had the stop and go, and I had a puncture. And over here, I had a problem in the engine yesterday. I couldn't qualify. That's why we were really much behind, but I just tried to fix the problem today in the race to try and see if we could go for the fastest lap, at least to get a point, to try and salvage something, but unfortunately we couldn't do it.
We appreciate your time. I tell you, when luck changes for this guy, look out. He's fast, Paul.
Well, you bet he is. Christian Fittipaldi, who is Robbie Gordon's teammate. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, that questionable full course yellow, was it or wasn't it? Well, in Paul Tracy's mind, in the Newman Haas crew's mind, it was. They radioed to Tracy full course yellow. He cracked the throttle, lost the position. Then all of a sudden, as he came across the start-finish line, there was no full course yellow. Had to get back on the throttle. It was a costly miscue.
Well, Paul Tracy making his move to try and recover that position now as Tracy moves alongside of Villeneuve and comes off the corner ahead. So Paul Tracy, it was a mistake, but one that he's already beginning to make up for. Paul Tracy beginning now to chase the leaders of the race. F-16 Fighting Falcons from the Colorado Air National Guard, commanded by Major Keith Reimer. They've been here for 3 weeks in Australia. They provide some adversarial force for the Australian Air Force to practice against. You ride on board with Paul Tracy, who has really been on the fly the past couple laps, doing battle with Jacques Villeneuve, Stefan Johansson, and Scott Pruitt.
I referred in the beginning to the problems that Paul Tracy had 2 weeks ago at Miami. 4 crashes in practice, another one in the race. That in part has been traced to a brake problem, an ultra-sensitive brake system that was fitted to both the Newman Haas cars. Michael Andretti could live with that system. It was trouble for Paul Tracy. They changed that system. He has a less sensitive system here. He's been doing awfully well, and right now he is really the man to watch on the track.
The last time we saw Adrian Fernandez, he was parked against the wall. Now he's with Gary Gerould.
Paul, he's had to spend a good deal of time at the infield hospital. Adrian, what was the problem? Why have you been getting the medical treatment?
Well, it's when I hit the wall, the steering wheel jerked quickly to the right and hurt my thumb. It's not broken, but it's pretty swollen now, so they're trying just to give me some eyes on it.
You had struggled to find speed yesterday. You seemed to find it. I know you were really uplifted, ready to go, thought it was going to be a good day.
Yeah, it's a big disappointment. The car was good, and I think we just put it too low, and I just couldn't turn. I went a little bit deep, and I just couldn't turn. I just went straight into the wall. So it's sad for the guys, but there's always one more to go.
And we'll see you on the Oval at Phoenix in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian Fernandez, the EDS computer system. In fact, they came all the way across the Pacific and installed their specialized antennas right into the streets here of Surfers Paradise. Reporting now that we are over the halfway point in the race and that Michael Andretti continues his dominance just like at Miami. But remember, at Miami, it only takes a quick movement of one car to end that kind of domination.
Right now, as we watch Paul Tracy there in the red and white car, he trails Stefan Johansson, who's just ahead of him in the bluish car. And that is a battle now for third place. Johansson third, Tracy fourth. And, of course, ahead of Bobby in second. And then the questionable Michael Andretti. How much will he be delayed by what appears to be a pit stop coming up very soon?
Well, Tracy's been on the move. We watched just a little bit ago and watched him pass Villeneuve, Sam. He was really hooked up and moving. So as the race has been going on, Paul's been getting faster.
You know, Bobby, he's driven a really sensible race. He was careful in the early going. Obviously, did not want to make another mistake. Last year, in the first 4 races, he managed to score only 2 points. He doesn't want to start with this new team this year the way he started last year.
And I
in
talked
Miami, it looked bad.
And I talked to Carl Haas. He said that he's been talking to him constantly, trying to get him to slow down. I told Carl, I said, you're lucky you have a race driver fast enough to slow down. How about if you have one you try to speed up? That the owners won't do.
I'll tell you what, the kid is looking good here this weekend. Look at his pursuit of Stefan Johansson now. Bobby, the car that Stefan is driving is the Penske chassis from last year that was so incredibly powerful.
Yes, it certainly was last year, and they bought one of Penske's cars, of course, but it isn't quite the same. It's run by a different team. And I'm sure, and in fact, I know that Roger doesn't sell all the little tiny secrets that he has. He sells the car fully developed. The car is a good car. Stefan likes it. He feels the tires today are not quite suited to that car. Very much the same complaint that little Al has.
You mean you buy that chassis and there's a whole bunch of little holes and marks that you don't know what they do?
Well, not really. They just have some little tricks on the settings. They'll give the guys a good start when Penske sells the car, but they don't babysit it completely after that, I guess is the story.
More on Stefan Johansson, Gary Gerald.
Well, just talking with Tony Bentonhausen, the owner for Stefan, and you know, Paul, in the past, so many times it seems like this team has been somewhat snake-bitten, had tough luck. They've got their fingers crossed. They like the way the car's reacting right now. I said, what's the primary concern for Tony? He says, we're just trying to carry the car. We're trying to read it well, react to it, not push it, stress it too hard. They haven't had problems with gearboxes as so many others have. They like what's happening right now in this camp.
Stefan Johansson just ahead of Tracy. Battle for third place. We'll watch.
Keep in mind when you watch Tracy that Johansson in front of him is the car. One of the cars that last year so dominated kart racing.
Johansson's best finish last year was a 4th. He had a pair of 5ths, but he's running 3rd now, headed possibly for a podium finish where he's luck to hold. So this is a very big day for Stefan Johansson, the Swedish driver who once drove in Formula 1 for Ferrari.
Continuing to watch the run of Paul Tracy chasing Stefan Johansson as they scream down the pit straight here at Surfers Paradise, Australia. Don't forget, ABC Sports continues its auto racing coverage in 2 weeks. IndyCar action continuing as Bobby Rahal battles the Arizona heat and some hot drivers in the Phoenix 200 presented by Pyroil. That's live here April 2nd on ABC Sports. And we've got a car slowing, and it's Villeneuve.
Yes, that's really a sad deal. Whatever his problem is, Villeneuve's running so good. He's going into the pits right now, though.
The winner of the first race of the season at Miami 2 weeks ago, suddenly slowing, coming off the pace and into the pit area. Team Green is there to meet him. And already he starts to take the steering wheel off and climb out of the car. So while running up toward the front for most of the day,
obviously he has the transmission and engine out, because when you see him lay the rags on it that are wet, that's so the heat won't burn the paint right off the cars from the engine. And he gets out like that, you know that he's broken either the engine or the transmission.
Again, the view there for a second from the refueled helmet as Gary Gerald going in pursuit of Jack Villeneuve. Gary, is he willing to talk right now? He could be upset.
Well, we'll find out. Jack, what was the situation? What was the problem?
Well, first, it's the 4th gear broke. After a while, third gear as well, and then all the gears broke.
A lot of teams having transmission problems. You struggled on the first day. Were you confident going into this race that you'd be able to overcome that?
Well, I thought the gearbox would be okay, but since the first day of test we've had problems with that new gearbox, and it seems to be a little too weak.
All right, thank you. Jack Villeneuve obviously wants to get back away from the crowd of spectators here. He's headed back to his garage.
And great that he's bothering to even take the time. You can imagine how frustrating that is. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, the word is that Michael Andretti should make his presence known on pit road very shortly. Remember, he's the one with the short fuel load, so he will be the first of the leaders to show his way onto pit road. And the other report we've got, Paul, is slight sprinkles are beginning to fall, so many of the teams have run back to get their rain tires, hold them in the back of the pits, and hopefully not have to bring them to the front.
Well, Surfers Paradise is a tropical area. You're looking inland toward the outback of Australia, and the rainforest not far from here. And you did see some shower activity. Let's hope it doesn't sweep too much across Surfers, but the teams are ready nevertheless.
This is the time of the year that they get rain down here, and it's usually in the afternoon, and we're definitely in the afternoons.
We're very far south, down on the same latitude as Cape Town at the southern tip of Africa, and Santiago over in Chile in South America. This is very, very far south down here.
Michael Andretti, 39 laps complete. During the last lap, a little over 102 miles an hour. He's been easily the fastest car throughout the day. His fastest lap turned at 103.5 miles an hour as he continues dominating this race. So the action continues at Surfers Paradise, Australia. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. Ready. Heads for the pits at Surfers Paradise, Australia. He's in much earlier than everybody else because he did not get a full load of fuel on the last stop, Jack Arute.
That's correct, Paul, but they will make certain that he takes a full load this time as well, Paul. They are going... Now there's a problem with the air jack. It is not lifted up. There we go. They are going to make a change, Paul, back to the originally recommended compound tire. So Newman Haas has gone back to what they qualified on, and he is off and away. But that was a long stop for Michael Andretti.
Well, I especially watched the vent hose to make sure some methanol fuel got up into it, and he appears to now have a full tank of fuel. Made that stop on the 41st lap, Bobby.
Yes, and when he went out, you watched he was locking up his front brakes. The tires are still cold. They're not up to temperature. They don't have full grip yet. Michael was kind of lucky that he didn't have a bad problem getting into that chicane.
Watch the height of Michael's helmet in the car. See how low down it is now as another car roars by.
Boy, there's the hard cold tires.
See, the tires are up to temperature. But now watch what happens. He's out on the Esplanade now, and he pushes so hard on the throttle that his head starts coming up out of the cockpit. See it there? That's because he's pushing really hard on the throttle. Now a chicane is coming up, and when he nails the brakes there, see, he scrunches back down in. 3.5 G's, he told me this morning, under braking.
Yes, and if you notice, Michael was really, the car was not adapting to the new rubber compound he put on there. He was really slowing down for a while.
Here's a super fight, that ongoing battle for third place. Stefan Johansson holding off Paul Tracy.
This is where Tracy is showing incredible maturity. In earlier years, he would have tried to rip by Johansson in one great out-braking maneuver. Mind you, he's still going to have to pass him, and it's going to be extremely exciting when he makes the attempt. But he's been very, very careful with Johansson.
Scott Pruitt is not far behind, and keeping a close eye on this battle as Pruitt runs in fifth. There you see him just up track. And that is the top place Firestone car. The first positions are all Goodyear tires. This is Firestone.
Pruitt actually had the fastest lap, surprisingly, at Miami.
Teo Fabi into the pits, Gary German.
Talk with Neil Nicolai, Tony Brunetti. They like the way the car's handling, but Teo has suddenly pulled the steering wheel off the post. The car went up on the jacks, the engine died, the wheel has come off. This is totally unexpected. He was in a position to challenge Michael Andretti, and you can see the belts are off, and Teo is coming out. This great drive suddenly aborted. No explanation at the moment, Paul.
Well, what in the world could that be? Teo Fabi just climbing out very quickly.
It's probably a transmission problem. A lot of the guys have been having transmissions. This track is normally not hard on transmissions, but, boy, we've had a bunch of it today.
Back on the battle, Johansson and Tracy. And with Michael Andretti's pit stop, this becomes a battle for the lead of the race. Johansson is currently the race leader. Tracy in second place. Remember, Michael went in early into the pits. Also, Bobby, what we have to think about is what that will do with Andretti's final fuel stop. He surely has to stop again. Let's go to the pits first, though, and Gary Gerould.
Paul, the problem for Teo Fabi was a broken exhaust system, something that they did not count on, they did no knowledge of. They were ready for a routine stop, and Teo's day is done. It's a broken exhaust system.
Oh, boy. You see, normally that would have been radioed in, like if he had an engine or transmission. I was wondering why he didn't radio it in, but he wouldn't know if the exhaust was broken. The mechanic saw it when they took the hood off and told him to shut her down.
Saw it, or would you hear it as it comes in?
I wouldn't hear it. They're just really small engines. Until their turbocharger lights up, you really don't hear much.
Battle for the lead here. Stefan Johansson. Paul Tracy chasing. Michael Andretti is back in 5th place as a result of that stop. The top of the order is Johansson, Tracy, Scott Pruitt now 3rd, Bobby Rahal 4th, and then Michael Andretti.
Johansson is having one of the best races I think he's had in an awful long time. He knows that he's leading the race. That's last year's Penske car again, which, as we know, last year was a very good car. He's been complaining a lot about the tire design, complaining about the casing, the carcass of the tire, not being complementary to the Penske car.
Emerson Fittipaldi, he runs 14th into the pits. This should be a routine stop. Though it hasn't been that long, only 13 laps since Fittipaldi was last in the pits. And off he goes. You mentioned, Bobby, that you were watching the Penske team time a pit stop for Little Al.
Well, when he came in earlier, in fact, the last pit stop I remember seeing him come in, he did a timed stop. Now, Roger is very cagey. He does this very often. But what his method was right there, it's really hard to tell because it had something to do with the fact that Little Al having 2 black flags was way back in the pack.
The battle for the lead continues. Stefan Johansson, Paul Tracy. It's been 19 laps since their last stop, Jack Arute.
Well, here's the deal, Paul. Paul Tracy will come in under a regularly scheduled fuel window, and that should be his last stop of the day. The same cannot be said for his teammate, Michael Andretti. As we said at the beginning, when he came up 12 gallons short in the beginning, now they are going to run the gambit all the way to the end. The Newman Haas team, Michael Andretti's crew, are aware that rain is on the horizon. They're hoping for that rain, because then having to come in and take rain tires, they could have a splash and go as well. If not, they'll have to rely on the onboard telemetry to run it right down to the ragged edge. They're not sure whether they can go the distance. In fact, I think if you talk to them honestly off the record, they know they can't.
Well, you're going to have to put a lot of faith in that telemetry, of course. They've been using it for a long time now. Johansson runs in first, still being chased by Paul Tracy and Scott Pruitt. Gold Coast, Surfers Paradise, Australia, a great battle for the lead. Stefan Johansson currently has it, looking to grasp his first IndyCar win in that Penske 94 chassis that was so successful for the Penske team last year, allowing them to finish 1, 2, 3 in the point standings. Right behind him, Paul Tracy in a much improved Lola, a design this year that is working very well, and he has been right at the back of Johansson at every corner.
That might even be the car, could be the car that he actually drove last year. How do you like that?
Let's go to the pits, Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, not good news for Michael Andretti. He radioed into his crew, we're dead. It seems that the car is stuck in one gear. He can't get it out of that gear and is having to work his way around, stuck in one gear. In the meantime, the Newman Haas crew is awaiting the arrival on pit road of Paul Tracy. Let's check in with Gary Gerould.
To update the situation with Teo Fabi, he's gotten back into the cockpit. You can see the helmet is on over the shoulder. They've gone to the spare car, got a spare piece of the exhaust system, which they're putting in place. They hope to get back out just to finish the event. Any chance to win, of course, long gone. Paul?
Some hot work there, changing exhaust systems on a car just off the track.
Gentlemen, we could see a repeat of what happened in Miami, which is a new leader emerging from the exchange of pit stops. Newman Haas team is very, very fast here, and it might be that Paul Tracy will follow Johansson into the pits but come out the leader. That's just something we should watch for.
Rahal was 3rd as he was in and out of the pits. Scott Pruitt also made his stop, so we're still waiting for the leaders of the race, Johansson and Tracy, and there they are.
Sometimes when the cars come out of the pits, like we just saw with Bobby Rahal, you can see what the tires do. If the tires are not warmed up and seated in really good, they're just, the cars are all over the track. Now these two cars here, first and second place, are not too far away from going in for pit stop. It's going to be interesting when they come out. Let's watch and see how their cars jerk around with a change of tires.
Johansson's car is owned by Tony Bettenhausen, who's been in business since 1986 with the race team. He won a race himself as a driver, but they've been winless as a team. This is a very big day for this smaller team, somewhat underfunded compared to the really big teams like Newman Haas.
And both first and second place head into the pits. Paul Tracy following Stefan Johansson.
Watch this very carefully, gentlemen.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Stefan Johansson comes to rest first, but now Paul Tracy follows him in. Now, the advantage for Tracy is he's further up pit road and beyond, for the most part, the radar gun. So his exit speed will be able to be a little faster. Let's take it to Gary Jarrell. Gary?
Well, the first time that Stefan Johansson has led a race in his career, and he's down off the Jackson gone. The chase is on now. And boy, what a moment it would be for Tony B if Stefan can somehow pull this one off.
Tracy out first, followed by Johansson.
Now that just is strictly the pit crews again. We always tell people how important the pit crews are. That was a perfect example. The pit crew on Paul Tracy's car, Carl Haas's team, physically beat the Johansson team out.
We saw that in Miami, of course, 2 weeks ago. That's how Jacques Villeneuve took the lead. It was in the pits, so we've just seen it again.
Both cars must be very careful. Remember, this is fresh, cold rubber on these cars, and if you push it too hard, you're in big trouble.
And you can see Tracy coming right out of that turn right there, and the rear end just jumped right out on him. They have to give him a little bit of time, but of course, these are both very good drivers. I can remember back, I was talking about the pit stops and all. Rick Gallus from Albuquerque. I can remember how he and Little Al could lead races, but they'd come in the pits and lose them. And he just started on a year-long practice pit stop, and he came out to be very good with his team that way.
Brian Herta. Fittipaldi, Emerson Fittipaldi should be just ahead, running 13.
Brian Herta, of course, had a major accident last summer in Toronto. Interesting story Dr. Olvey was telling me a few moments ago, which is that when Brian was in the ambulance on the way to the field hospital, just moments after the crash, he said, "Doctor, how long am I going to be out of racing?" I mean, he had a badly broken leg and some other injuries. He was already saying, how quickly can I get back in business?
So now, with the stops by Johansson and Tracy, Michael Andretti reassumes the lead of the race. But as mentioned, he could have a problem. Surfers Paradise Resort, just a few feet away from the track, 330 rooms, 28 floors. Where we're staying, it's got this great pool, has a saltwater pool. You can go scuba diving in it. Has a great water slide. In fact, I can do a full 360 roll coming out of the water slide. You ride with Michael Andretti. The report now, Michael has no second gear, but Bobby Unser's second gear is where he has been going to power through the chicanes. On both sides of the track, there are 3 of them. Now, he has been running as high as 103 miles an hour. He turned the last lap at 100 even, so it's not bleeding off all that much. Behind him is Paul Tracy, but 9 seconds back.
Okay, Paul, besides right now knowing that he doesn't have the second gear, I was listening to him because we have our sound inside the cars on that thing. He's been coming out a lot of the chicanes early in the race in 3rd gear, not using second gear as much as he was, like during qualification. So actually, he's really not slowing down as much as we might think he is. And plus, he's back leading the race. So Michael is not having as many problems as sometimes they call in to complain about.
All right, at the start of the program, we were talking about all the news stories in IndyCar racing. Let's review them now. Let's start with Jack.
Well, Paul, we talked about Michael Andretti. He sat on the pole. He led a lot of this race. Now he's got some gearbox problems. He is still out front, but he's seeing the competition is closing quickly. In the meantime, the guy that started on the outside pole, the baby-faced assassin, well, he's by the boards with Team Green. So my top 2 stories, one is still in the race. The other one will have to wait until Phoenix. Let's check in with Gary Jarrell.
Jack, we talked about Gilles de Ferran and how fast he'd been in the first 2 opening events in terms of qualifying. Of course, the big story for him, a pair of black flags in the early going. One for shortcutting the course. Then when he paid his penalty there, he was too fast out of the pits. He had to come in a second time. But they've elected to stay out there to chase points. And he now is in 12th position. And if he's in 12th position, that means he'll get at least one championship point if he can hang on to that. Meanwhile, it's an ongoing track test session for the Jim Hall team. Let's go to Paul.
Hiro Matsushita got tagged from behind. You saw it there as Robbie Gordon closed on him. That took out the left rear. He had to come in and get it changed.
At the beginning of the race, I wondered how the brakes would hold up. Well, there have been quite a few yellow flags that were at the beginning. That would ease the situation on the brakes, and the story really has been more the transmissions. But the other thing I wondered about was this man here, Paul Tracy, who you see driving down the front straight here at Surfers Paradise, crossing the start-finish line right there. How would he do? Well, he has mixed a very canny and cautious start with a very aggressive middle part of the race. He currently lies second behind Andretti, who's having trouble. This race could very well be Paul Tracy.
And Bobby, at the start, the Penske team was your concern.
Yes,
it's still
well,
a concern.
Yes, it still is. But I think it's probably one of the biggest stories so far is, have they gotten their cars fixed? Are the 95 cars as fast as the 94s? If Penske and his people made some mistakes. Little Al was quite happy. He's been very aggressive. 2 black flags. It really put him back in the race a long ways today, but he was fast. Emerson Fittipaldi in a team car has not looked very good. Penske will still keep working, just like I described it earlier. Somehow or another, it seems difficult when you come back as a champion. The number 1 on the car isn't always a good number to have.
Of the Penske team, Unser Jr. runs in 9th place, and Emerson Fittipaldi is running in 13th as we watch the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. And we get a look back. About 7 seconds. He's whittled almost 2 seconds off of Michael Andretti in the past 3 laps is Paul Tracy. Stefan Johansson is spaced 5 seconds back from Paul Tracy, and then Bobby Rahal runs in 4th and Scott Pruitt in 5th.
Now, Michael, you know, for example, in qualifying, we know he was using like 2nd gear through, for example, the chicanes. Now, Paul Tracy, for a win, will gamble on tearing his transmission. And I'm not saying he's going to tear it up. I certainly hope he does it, but he'll gamble on it, run it as hard as he possibly can. Anything to find Michael with a weakness and catch him.
Next Saturday on ABC Sports, it's a battle of the baseline. Steffi Graf and the top names in women's tennis are in Key Biscayne for one of their premier events. Our coverage of the Lipton Championship begins with the women's final Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern right here on ABC.
Interesting to see 2 Newman Haas cars leading the race. They're 1-2, Michael Andretti there about to lap Hiro leading the race. Now the question is, will Tracy, if he closes in and he's only 7.3 seconds back right now, battle Michael for the lead? That will be interesting, and we'll have to see it, because this team operates like the Penske team, which is every man for himself. There are no team orders.
Michael Andretti wants a clear road, and he's trying to wave his way clear. He is well aware that Paul Tracy is closing down. He's trying to get Hiro Matsushita out of his way so he can pull away as fast as he can and get away from Tracy. The race continues here in Surfers Paradise. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. Australia, Michael Andretti leads the race, followed by Paul Tracy, Stefan Johansson, and Bobby Rahal. Let's go to the pits now. Once again, Gary Gerould.
Well, Chief Executive Officer of IndyCar, Andrew Craig. And Andrew, you've got to be terribly proud of what's going on in the success of this event here on the Gold Coast. And yet there seems to be concern about a possible date change for this event in the future. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes, we're very proud of the event. We're going to have a sellout today, just like we had in Miami 2 weeks ago. But you're right, there is a problem with the date. The Formula One race is going to be in Melbourne starting next year in '96. At around about the same time as this race, and clearly in a small market like Australia, it's going to be very difficult to accommodate 2 races at the same time. We're working with the promoter to find a new date for the race. It's very difficult because, of course, of our many other obligations, but it's something we got in hand.
Now, as a man who is nearing his 1st anniversary in this role where you shoulder so many responsibilities, I know that not only you're proud of the PPG Cup, but this year you've added a couple of bonus awards in the Nations Cup and a Manufacturers Championship.
That's right. The 2 new championships are a Manufacturers Championship to recognize the important role that companies such as Mercedes-Benz, Ford, and Honda play in our series, and of course Toyota coming on board next year. We felt it's important that they had their own championship to recognize what they bring to our series. The Nations Cup is a new idea, and I think it's unique in motorsport. For the first time ever, our American drivers are going to have the chance to take on in head-to-head competition all the other drivers from throughout the world. So we have Team America, Team Brazil, Team Canada. We look back at last year, the Americans would have won it last year. Who knows who'll win it this year? We have terrifically strong representation from 10 nations.
It's great competition. We appreciate your continued efforts to make it even better.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And as you can see, that time being held up behind Hiro Matsushita was very costly for Michael Andretti. On the other hand, Paul Tracy was able to handle up Matsushita much quicker, and now only sits a second and a half behind the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, let's update you on the fuel consumption story for Michael Andretti. His gearbox problems may be benefiting the fuel consumption. The telemetry is showing that now they literally could go right to the last lap before they run out of fuel. So they're beginning to think that maybe it's a mandatory short shifting type situation. Losing the lower gears is forcing him to get a little bit better mileage, and Michael Andretti may not have to come back into the pits for a splash and go.
And of course, Paul and
you got a glimpse there of Johansson slowing on the course, Bobby.
Yes, I just saw that just for a moment there. But at any rate, what happens when Hiro, who is obviously going way slower than fast race speed, not going very fast, Michael has second gear that's gone. He needs a second gear when he tries to lap these cars so he can get off the corners fast. This is what's really hurting, whereas Tracy still has all of his gears and he can squirt off the turns.
Two cars sitting by the edge of the course, Johansson and Fittipaldi. We've gone full course yellow. Gary Gerald.
Well, we're in the
one car into the wall. That's DeFerrin. Looks like he's bounced off a wall. Sorry, Gary.
All right, so things happening all over. We're in the Bentonhausen Johansson pit, and Tony B disgustedly throwing the headset down moments ago. They believe that they have a gearbox problem. It's haunted and plagued so many teams. You understand the electronics have been a problem for Emerson Fittipaldi, and now the contact with DeFerrin.
DeFerrin still sits in the cockpit. Let's take a look at it under replay. This, of course, is Paul Tracy and Michael as they slow under the full course yellow. And that will put Tracy right on the back end. Now, here's the situation with Gilles DeFerrin.
In the yellow car at the top of the screen.
Looks like he bounced off of Eddie
Looks like he bounced off of a car instead of the wall to me.
Ooh. There it is.
And there it is right there, the left rear. And I'm wondering about even the tire on Cheever's car. That was a very hard hit.
This, of course, will help Michael Andretti, the fuel situation.
Michael Andretti may have just gotten the break that he needed at Surfers Paradise. Rolls in Queensland, Surfers Paradise, Australia, one magnificent town. Coming to Surfers Paradise is a perfect example of mixing business with pleasure. Many of the drivers took full advantage of the beautiful countryside, and they all really enjoyed their stay down under.
It's a great country.
The people are great. It's a great venue.
G'day, mate.
It's a good time. We've been out playing the boats a little bit.
We've been doing everything from a little bit of surfing and boating to golfing to riding the dolphins.
I'm here to race.
I went to see some kangaroos and always sleeping.
They jump around pretty fast.
I'd say they probably go about 25 miles per hour.
I know they won't beat our race car.
Well, actually, they bound at 35 miles an hour.
I guess they're pretty good boxers, too.
Watch out.
Beautiful.
Going down beautiful.
Saturday on ABC Sports, the Professional Bowlers Tour rolls into Connecticut. PGA money leader Dale Untermont takes on the field at the Tums Classic. Then we begin coverage of golf's first major of the year. Defending champion Donna Andrews and the LPGA's best tee it up in the Nabisco Dinah Shore. That's live Saturday here on ABC Sports. Well, we anticipate coming back to green flag here shortly. We are in the closing laps of this race now. 9 to run out. Remember, the car in front, Michael Andretti, has gearbox problems. Doesn't have a second gear. Doesn't have a top gear, they're now saying, Bobby.
A sixth gear. That's two things that's really going to hurt him an awful lot, especially on the start. He not only can't get going early, he won't have as much top end.
And that's the gear he uses at each of the chicanes. Here it comes.
They go screaming past the pace car. Green flag is out. Paul Tracy needs to make his move right now, but he also needs to be careful. Michael Andretti holds him back.
Michael timed that beautifully. He made the most out of his crippled car. And Paul Tracy was sensible. He was not bullheaded.
Now remember, Michael is normally the fastest of the two cars. He qualified faster, he's run faster in most of the practice deals, but he's lacking 2 gears again.
All right, let's ride with Paul Tracy as he chases down the leader.
Speed due to the second gear that Tracy had coming off that turn. They're headed into a tight turn.
And Paul Tracy moves down to the inside of Michael Andretti, just as Sam Posey suggested, the gear making a world of difference there. And Paul Tracy picks up the lead of the race.
You notice right at the end of the straightaway is when Tracy got a little jump. That was when 6th gear comes into play. Michael had no more. He was probably on his rev limiter.
And Bobby Rahal now closing on the back end of Michael Andretti.
Michael is a wounded animal right now.
There's nothing Michael can do to regain it.
Listen now. Listen to Michael's gearbox. Going to make it to the end of the race.
Sounds terrible. Part of it is the gearbox is sure something making a lot of noise.
And Paul Tracy pulls steadily away. Michael Andretti now needs to worry about a charging Bobby Rahal, Scott Pruitt, and Mauricio Gugelmin. You can see the 3 of them lined up with about 100 yards separating each. As they come down the pit straight once again, Rahal is right there at the back end of Michael Andretti's car.
Rahal was 3rd 2 weeks ago in Miami. He's lying 3rd right now, and actually probably ahead in championship situation, even with 3rd. And of course, he's got every chance with just 6 laps to go to overtake Michael Andretti for 2nd. Rahal has fought his way back up from a very poor qualifying run that was a result of motor problems yesterday, and had another one of his great come-from-behind drives. He had 2 or 3 of those last year.
Tracy, Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal, Scott Pruitt, Mauricio Gugelmin, the top 5. Then Danny Sullivan, Unser Jr., Raul Boesel, Eddie Cheever, and Robbie Gordon round off the top 10. Here's the pass. You're looking over from Michael's car.
Unbelievably tense moment because 2 teammates, if Tracy had misjudged that and taken out both cars, that would have been, talk about the doghouse, that would have, they might have thrown the key away. But instead it was clean and terrific.
So Bobby Rahal runs in 3rd place behind Michael Andretti. Paul Tracy is now the leader of the race. We'll be back for the finish at Surfers Paradise, Australia. The finish now at Surfers Paradise, Australia. You're on board with Bobby Rahal. That's Michael Andretti. The 2nd place car just ahead, now just behind as you look back to Bobby Rahal, the leader of the race. Remember, Sam Posey at starting said, we have a camera on Paul Tracy's car and you'll see him move for the lead. You saw that. You saw him, as you see him now, not only move for the lead, but take over the lead. Now he has a full 3 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti. Let's go to Gary.
Checking with the Andretti pit crew, Paul, we told them about what you were hearing in the booth, and they said their feeling is it's been bad for so long, if the gearbox was going to have gone, it would have gone a long time ago. Also updating, Brian Herta had contact with Eddie Cheever, damaged suspension right front. He had an onboard camera carrying for us today. He's now out of the race.
Well, Michael Andretti is running laps, the last one at 101 miles an hour. That's consistent with most of the race, but Rahal's still closing in. He can still run at speed. But let's take a look at Rahal here. What Rahal has is the ability to get in and off of some of the corners a little better. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Bobby Rahal's doing a great job. Robbie Gordon, the same cannot be said. He's lost on the course. He's pulled off, and Derek Walker and the team don't know what happened to the car because his radio is out.
Well, there's the view back from the car. He's off on one of the access roads. Apparently okay, with a lot of spectators looking over the fence to check him out.
As we stay there with Bobby Rahal looking forward to Michael Andretti, watch some of the blocking if Bobby gets up close. He just did a little while ago. And Michael just started running all over the track to keep Bobby from passing. And if he gets close, it's going to happen again.
Michael Andretti is driving one of the great races of his life, I think. He won here last year, of course, with a great race. And he's again driving a great race in a crippled car.
Just hanging onto this car is remarkable. His last lap, he picked the speed up at 101.2. Paul Tracy still 3.5 seconds ahead.
He's getting through the turns fairly well. It's just that he isn't getting off the turns fast. He doesn't have the punch off the turns. That's how Tracy was able to pass him, and it's how Rahal presumably will try to set him up.
61 laps, the scheduled distance. 65 laps, the scheduled distance. We just turned 65.
Rahal has been Michael's nemesis, basically, throughout racing. Every time that Michael has finished second in a championship, Bobby Rahal has beaten him. So Rahal has been his nemesis. He is again right now, as you see him start down that straight.
Rahal trying to make the move on Michael Andretti. Let me clarify this. 62 laps complete. 65 laps the scheduled distance. Rahal still in pursuit of Michael.
Now watch when we come out of the 90-degree corners. The chicane's not quite as bad because Michael can keep up a little momentum right here. But here we're going to come into some 90-degree corners right after this now. This is where Rahal should be able to pull out and jerk Michael right off the turns and pass him.
That's Scott Pruitt in 4th place. He just comes around the corner there. Same kind of performance as he turned in at Miami. Very consistent. Mauricio Gugelmin is 5th.
Right here's our first 90 right there. Rahal gets close, can't get by.
This is where Tracy, however, was able to set up Michael.
And Tracy continues to pull away. He's now 4 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti. The look back from Michael's car. Boy, that gearbox is noisy.
But it's hanging in there.
With 2 gears missing, Michael Andretti is still running a pace consistent with the leaders at over 101 miles an hour with the leader, Paul Tracy.
Without doubt, he has the best handling car here. Not so good without a transmission working.
Last lap, Paul Tracy was at 101.5 miles an hour, according to the EDS system. And Michael Andretti, 101.2. Paul Tracy down the pit straight one more time. Across the start-finish line with 2 laps to go now.
We have seen Paul Tracy win races. Of course, he's won 8 races. But often he just leads them, tears away from the start. It's unusual for him to produce a winning drive from a 9th place starting position. Today he has shown the maturity that all of his fans have wondered if he had in him. And I think the obvious evidence as of today is, yes, he can do it all.
This is a superlative run for Paul Tracy, no question about that. A year ago, as we watch this battle between Rahal and Andretti, the battle for second, Michael Andretti was my seatmate on Qantas coming across the Pacific. This year, when we were ready to leave Los Angeles, Paul Tracy dropped into the seat next to me and said, Michael says you're good luck. He rode with you last year, so I'm going to ride with you this year.
If we believe that, Paul.
Boy.
Hey, all I can do is point to the screen. That's all I can say.
I've ridden everywhere with you, Paul. Why aren't things...
Bobby Rahal is trying everything he's ever learned in all of his years of motor racing, trying to overcome the lack of grip, trying to get a jump on Michael. He knows Michael's got problems, but he just can't seem to get a jump on him.
Well, you really have to appreciate the job that Michael is doing here. Paul Tracy now 4.5 seconds ahead of Michael.
Michael Andretti is turning in one of those gritty performances that great racing drivers are defined by. It's a beautiful thing to see. And it takes no credit away from Rahal either. He's doing everything right, too. But just as you say, Bobby, just doesn't have the grip.
Paul Tracy flashes across the start-finish line with the white flag being displayed. Newman Haas cars running 1st and 2nd. Lola's out in front here. Remember how hard they struggled last year.
Remember that Newman Haas with 2 cars last year, including defending IndyCar champion Nigel Mansell, were unable to win a single race. And today, they run 1-2.
You know, the problem Rahal is going to have when they have their meetings after the race, if he doesn't get by Michael, is to say, we're really behind. He out-handled us by so much. We couldn't even get by with Michael having less than 2 gears of what we have.
The two third places in the first 2 races put Bobby Rahal on course for the kind of season that wins him a championship, Bobby, you know? He's always so consistent.
So Bobby Rahal, his last chances now if he's going to move into second place. For Paul Tracy, it's all but wrapped up. He's a full 5 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti as they came across the line last time. But Carl Haas has to be more than satisfied with what he has seen with his cars running first and second as Michael pitches and everybody can. And it looks like he brushed the wall. He did. He catches the wall on the other side. Rahal goes into second place. Michael Andretti just nips the wall coming through the chicane. Rahal now into second place.
He come out and hit that wall pretty hard. He just got it loose. He knew he had to keep his momentum up the corner. He tried, Paul, but he failed.
Oh, what a frustrating situation for Michael Andretti after a brilliant run with a disabled car to hold into second place. But you can't take anything away from this man. Paul Tracy scores the victory. His first for Newman Haas. Bobby Rahal will finish in second place. The accident on the last lap will give Scott Pruitt a third, Mauricio Gugelmin a fourth, and Danny Sullivan, Gugelmin's teammate, a fifth. So Pac West is going to look very strong here. And Paul Tracy has taken the day here in Surfers Paradise, Australia, while Michael Andretti ends his day disgustingly against the wall. Poor Michael.
You can't knock him for trying as hard as he did. He had a choice, but by golly, he went down in style on that one. It's really sad.
Here
Look
it is.
at this, how hard he's trying. Look at this. He's just shaking that car so hard. The front end got to bouncing. He came out. The front end hit the wall first, obviously. Look at there. Then he comes across the track, and boom, he just finishes it off there.
Boy, it was so close, too. I think that first hit was only a matter of inches. Yep, he just barely caught it with the right rear, but enough impact to rip it off and to send him into the barrier. So the race is now complete in Surfers Paradise, and Paul Tracy has the win, followed by Bobby Rahal and Scott Pruitt. At the end of the run at Surfers was Paul Tracy. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, getting the congratulations of his car owner, Carl Haas. What a great comeback. After such trouble in Miami, Paul, victory lane for Newman Haas, the first one since 1993 for these guys.
Well, it's a great victory. I got to thank Kmart, Budweiser, and, you know, Carl and Paul for believing in me after Miami, after all the trouble I gave them there. But, you know, we had a good Saturday practice session, and then we missed it in qualifying, and once I drove the car this morning to warm up, I knew we had a good package, so I got out early and just saved the equipment was the key to the race.
So congratulations to Newman Haas Racing, Paul Tracy, and their Ford-powered Lola. After a dry spell of a year, coming up with the victory here in Surfers Paradise, followed by Bobby Rahal, then Scott Pruitt, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Danny Sullivan, the Pac West teammates, finishing at the bottom of the top 5. Al Unser Jr. gets some points, finishing in 6th place. Then Eddie Cheever, Raul Boesel, Michael Andretti scored with a 9th place, and 10th, Eliseo Salazar. Now let's go to Gary Gerould.
So Bobby Rahal, you get a great bonus on that last lap. You were trying to pressure him, I know, into a mistake, and suddenly there was the opportunity. What was that feeling?
Well, Michael was using the curbs more and more the last few laps, and he was really trying hard, and you know, I think he just hit it wrong and just lost it, and just in front of me to the S's in the back. You know, he'd been coming close, and boom, and you know, we couldn't really run with him down the straight, so I had to try to have him, you know, make something like that, and so I like to say hi to everybody at Saturdays in Powell, Ohio. All the Miller crowd's watching right now. We're coming home.
Bobby Rahal comes home in 2nd place. His mom's here to watch this one and enjoy the moment in victory lane as well.
Here are the PPG points. Bobby Rahal currently leads, followed by Gugelmin and Pruitt. Gary Gerould?
Tried harder to get second. What happened on that last lap, Michael?
I had no more rear brakes, and I just got into the chicane too hard. I started hitting the curbs, and I got out of sequence, and I lost it.
As defending champion, as a man who's had such great success here, I'm sure this one hurts an awful lot.
It really does. We lost second gear way early, and I just was hanging on. I mean, if we wouldn't have lost the gear, it would have been an easy win.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Too bad for Michael. One of the best drives of his life. Carl Haas and Paul Tracy celebrate on the podium. We've had a great time here in Surfers Paradise. See you in 2 weeks at Phoenix.